Hello everybody and welcome to episode number 6 of the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast. I am your host Frank Mandolini from Italy, and today we're going to remain in Scotland. If you followed our latest episode, we did an interview with ICW's own Luca De Pazzi, and today we're going to meet a fine connoisseur of the Scottish independent wrestling scene. His name is Billy Strachan, and he is the owner of the Scottish Wrestling Network blog, where you can find all results, all the events about the many independent wrestling federations in Scotland. But before we begin, I must remind you that you can follow me on Twitter at LMW Podcast. You can write us an email at lastminutewrestlingpodcast@gmail.com. You can check us out on Facebook, on YouTube, like, share and subscribe to all of our channels. And now let's start with the interview with Billy Strachan. Hi Billy.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here as a guest on the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast. So, Billy, you do a wonderful job in collecting all the results from various Scottish wrestling federations. Can you tell us a little bit what do you do? Yeah, tell me what's your job with the blog.
So back in 2012, I ended up getting tickets to go see a show in Perth, in about a couple hours away, SWE, and it had Roddy Piper, Tatanka, Chavo Guerrero. So I went to that. It was my first experience as a proper independent show. I'd only been to WWE in Aberdeen before for their house shows. So when I saw this, I loved it. I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to know more. So initially, I started a YouTube show. It was about an hour of me speaking and then clips of promos and maybe a match if I could get a hold of it. But I got fed up of doing that. There was a lot of work to it, as you probably know from doing a podcast. Yes. And I thought writing would probably be a better way to go. So I set up, originally I set up OSW TV, which is only Scottish wrestling because it was the YouTube show. Okay. But it kept, because I had a kind of a trio with Jay Hunter and Davin Malloy, who did OSW Chat and OSW Review. You may have heard of OSW Review, and most people seem to have. I changed the name eventually to Scottish Wrestling Network because folk were getting it confused, and I wish I got as many hits as OSW Review did, but I changed it to that just so it was a bit clearer, so folk knew what it was. So from there, collecting results, writing about it. We've got a great writer called Adam Morrison who's been doing the graphics for our Twitter stuff recently. He does a lot of spotlights. He's a great guy, and we've got writers from around the country. They're just doing it for fun. I wish I could say I make money off this, but I don't. It's just a blog. I have fun doing it, and I've got guys on my team that do it as well. So collect results, write reviews, write previews, do anything that we can think of that's about Scottish wrestling, just to promote it, because it's given so much to me as enjoyment, and I just want to give back a little bit. And if this is the way I can do it, then that's the way I'll do it.
Well, but this looks like a lot of things to do because there are many promotions in Scotland, right?
I think I would. Off the top of my head, I'm guessing there's about 16.
Whoa.
So there's quite a lot. A lot of them run maybe just like once or twice, maybe a quarter, once a quarter, or maybe every couple of months. But there is ones that run maybe 2-3 shows a month. Okay. Thankfully, because I've built up such a reputation with Scottish Wrestling Network, some of them are still a bit difficult to get results for, but generally it's very easy. So I have them pretty shortly after the show's end. If I'm not going to the show myself, I'll have people that are able to send me the results, which is super handy. It's really handy.
Yeah, definitely. Even because you cannot be in all the places all the time, I imagine.
Absolutely not. I mean, I think there's one instance, maybe in February, there was 10 shows a weekend.
Whoa.
And I was at none of them. So I needed to get everyone to send me results, which was a daunting task on a Friday, but by Sunday I had everything, and I was really surprised. But it just shows to show how passionate people are, that they're willing to help get this content out there.
Oh, that's so cool. Can you tell me where are the promotion based? I mean, I imagine mostly in the bigger cities, but is it you have like minor promotions or developmental ones or training schools or this kind of stuff?
There's lots of training schools. Mainly your promotions, a lot of them round about the central belt, so your Glasgow, Edinburgh, that kind of area.
Okay.
They go up as far as Wick, which is near the top of Scotland, and the one I frequent is in the northeast, which is in Aberdeen. It's WrestleZone, because I live in Elgin, so Aberdeen is about an hour and a half one way, and Inverness is about an hour the other way. So we've got SWA that come up once a year to Inverness, and we've got WrestleZone that run in the northeast. They're just everywhere. I think if you go to a nearish city, you'll find a wrestling show somewhere. But training schools, there's lots of them popping up from Aberdeen down to, well, from Wick even down to the borders. So there's a lot of reputable schools as well. So if you're looking to be a wrestler, then there's probably a school to at least dip your toes into fairly nearby, within a couple hours, if that.
Okay, and now we're seeing that the Scottish wrestling is blooming. Of course, now as we record, Drew McIntyre is the WWE champion, for example. But we have many other wrestlers that are working at major federations, and they are from Scotland. But I guess this hasn't always been the case. When do you think this all started? This all booming for Scottish wrestling?
Well, yeah, because our Scottish contingent for a very long time was the Canadian Roddy Piper, rest in peace, and then we had the Highlanders. If anyone remembers the Highlanders, I love.
Yeah, I do. I actually do remember them, but I think they were like sort of a parody. Even, I would say even borderline racist parody of Scottish people.
I think you could almost get away with it with Scotland, because we're that either self-depreciating or we're just happy just to have a bit of a laugh. But yeah, Robbie and Rory McAllister, the Highlanders, I love them because they were Scottish. They were my guys. I got to see them in Aberdeen when they came over for WWE in 2006, and I loved it. Anyway, so I think the real turning point really is ICW Boom, which was the Insane Fight Club documentary, which got more eyes on it, and also Drew. Drew is probably the biggest factor. Even when he was the chosen one, and I mean, maybe not 3-man band, but definitely when he was the chosen one and became Intercontinental Champion, that really put more focus on the Scottish independence, because he came from BCW, from ICW, and became Intercontinental Champion. So when he left, was it 2014? His passion to get better and to also get more focus on content around the world really drove home how good not just Scottish but also all independent wrestling is. And I think really a lot of people can say what made them want to enjoy watching wrestling, but I think Drew is the reason why a lot of people, especially in Scotland, were drawn to go into ICW, to go into BCW, to go into WrestleZone, because in 2014 he went everywhere. He was the marquee name. I saw him in a nightclub in Inverness called the Ironworks. Not even announced. He was the mystery opponent for Demo, who you may know as Killian Dane.
Killian Dane. He was big Demo.
Yeah. So it wasn't even announced on the show, but when you saw him, that's what folk went to go back, because you didn't know where he was going to appear. He was just everywhere, and really, I think he is the turning point, and he's the catalyst for why we're seeing so many great Scottish talents in WWE now, because they took the chance on him and he paid them back, and now they're taking a chance on others as well.
Yeah, I think he really showed his passion during these independent years between 2014 and 2017. I think he resigned with WWE.
I think so, yeah.
It was all over the place. It was, and mostly, I don't think he will get like good money for some of those bookings, but it was just because of his passion, I think.
Absolutely. Thankfully, I've been able to speak to him maybe once or twice, and the enjoyment he has just being in the locker room is very obvious from my very, very brief interactions with him. He's very happy to be there. whether it's like say in a nightclub in Inverness or if it's kicking someone down the road in Glasgow. He loves wrestling, and every time you hear him speak, you can tell that.
Definitely. I had the chance to meet him once at a WCPW show. I don't know if you remember that promotion.
I do, yeah.
and we had the chance to talk, and it was so funny. Not only because he was a very affable person, very knowledgeable as well, but he asked me, "Oh, Italy, whereabouts?" And I come from a part of Italy which is not really much known outside of Italy because it's not yet like your tourist places like Rome, Venice, Florence. It's not anything like that. It's a smaller city called Ancona. And as soon as I said Ancona, it was like, oh, Serie B, right? So he remembered that the football team of my city was in the second division of Italian football. That was so fun to me. I said, how could I don't even know in what division my team is now? How could you possibly know that?
That's the thing. I mean, I met him once. The first time I met him, again, was in Inverness. I was bodyguarding, keeping an eye on the queue for an autograph session that he was having. And he was just speaking to everyone that came back, giving them a good 3-5 minutes, which is more than you probably expect for each person, especially when he's a big star. And then afterwards, I got a picture with him. It's the worst picture ever. It's so grainy. And then the second time, I didn't know he was going to be there, so I was backstage again. It was Rock and Wrestle, the company was called. They were briefly in. They've been bought over by SWA, but that's a whole other thing. And I saw him backstage, and I was like, oh. And he went, oh, how you doing? I was like, why are you here? So it was amazing. And even the day after he won at WrestleMania, for whatever reason, he follows my personal Twitter. I don't know why, but he does.
Okay.
So I thought, well, I'm just going to fire him a quick DM because, why not? I said, thank you for doing that. I stayed up to watch it because, well, as you probably know, it's like crazy o'clock in the morning if you want to watch it live here. So I said, thank you. I loved it. Thank you for giving us that moment. And about 5 minutes later, he replied saying, thank you, mate. And that's WWE champion.
Yeah, definitely.
who's just replying to a fan. Honestly, I think there's no better person to lead a company forward, especially in this kind of time when there's very odd things happening in the world. He's just a stand-up class act. From when you meet him to interacting him in the future, he's just wonderful.
Now that you mentioned, of course, the difficult times that we're living now, and that most wrestling shows are de facto cancelled, and how's the situation for the Scottish independents now?
Well, I've been keeping a tab of all the events that have been cancelled because I've got an event calendar that keeps me right for doing a what's on post every week, which hasn't happened for a few weeks now. I haven't counted it out, but by my reckoning, there's been very least 30 to 40 shows cancelled since March.
Okay.
So that looks to continue up. Well, that's between March, and some are starting to cancel in June as well. So it's not great. Thankfully, a lot of wrestlers are taking that time to maybe build a little bit of a fan base with doing Twitch and doing stupid things like my 128 wrestler mega tournament of Doom on Twitter and the Battle Bowl that we've got going at the moment. So thankfully, or TikTok seems to be everywhere, but a lot of wrestlers seem to be.
That's worse than the disease, in my opinion. I fucking hate TikTok.
My wife's watching it at the moment, and it's great. I don't mind. It's absolutely fine. But when they get to the 8th video that's using the same background, I'm just like, no, I'm done. I'm done now. It's done. But it's done. In one way, it's terrible because wrestlers aren't getting paid. They're not being able to make any living off it. On the other hand, it's given them a chance to get their personality out there and maybe build a little bit of a following. So when it comes back, you go, oh, I like this. I don't know, Ian Skinner. I'll say Ian Skinner because he's really funny. He's been doing promos and stuff for anything at the moment. And I can tell you, as soon as the shows are back, he's a guy that I'll want to see because he's put his character, his personality across so much on social media that you go, yeah, I want to see this guy wrestle now. So it's very bad, but there's some glimmers of hope and hopefully some positives that come out of it.
Talking about the Scottish wrestling scene, let us discover some new talents here. Who's your favorite? Who's somebody who we should put an eye on? And this kind of stuff. Educate us, I would say.
I would be remiss. I think a lot of people will be disappointed if they're listening to me speak about wrestling if I don't mention two people in particular, because I speak about them constantly. One would be Aspen Faith. He is originally from Aberdeen, Northeast, and he's now in Perthshire, I think. He wrestles in ICW as part of the Kings of Catch and the Filthy Generation with Lewis Gervin and Stevie Boy Xavier. I don't know how to describe it. He comes across as very dismissive and cool, but he's an incredible wrestler at the same time, so it makes it look like it's super easy for him. He also does graphic design as Bear Hug Design, who does great stuff for likes of for everyone pretty much in Scotland. So I would definitely say Aspen Faith, check out his stuff. He's got some stuff for Discovery Wrestling and ICW on YouTube, worth looking out for. Other one is Sammy Jane, who again, it was probably one of the first wrestlers I actually saw on Scottish Independence. I saw her at that SWE show in 2012, which was like her second match, and it was against Nikki Storm, who's now Nikki Cross.
Yeah.
And I've seen her evolve into this really kind of timid Princess Sammy to this like main event empress, she calls herself now, Sammy Jane. To see that journey from 2012 to 2020, and to see she keeps getting better as well, which is wonderful. I think she's really one of the most on social media. I think she's highly rated, but in reality, she seems underrated. She doesn't seem to be coming into conversations when you think about Viper, Kaylee Ray, Nikki Storm, Nikki Cross, all these great Scottish women's wrestlers. And I think Sammy Jane always keeps getting forgotten. And I think she's incredible. So she's an incredible wrestler, and she should be everywhere. So I would implore your listeners to go check out some Sammy Jane matches.
Yeah, I will do it myself actually. maybe I will put some links on the comments below on YouTube.
Excellent.
Do you want to plug some of your stuff? Where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at ScottResNet. So if you search Scottish Wrestling Network, you'll find it. That'll be fine. Facebook is Scottish Wrestling Network. It's an easy one. We have an Instagram, which is the same, ScottResNet. I've tried to keep it all as kind of simple as possible. Otherwise, I won't remember it myself. So ScottResNet everywhere, just about. I think I've got a Tumblr somewhere. Never use it, but I've got one. And we've got a YouTube channel as well, which Adam is in charge of. He's put up a video recently, 10 wrestlers to watch out for, which is brilliant. It's his first kind of foray into doing voiceover stuff. And it's incredible. It's got great feedback, so definitely worth looking out for that. And the website itself, scottresnet.ml, but you can find it at the old address, which is oswtv.wordpress.com. It's mainly just because I haven't got around to actually buying a proper domain for it. So it's still on the old OSWTV link. But if you go on the Twitter, there'll be links everywhere. They'll keep you right. So I think that's about it. I don't think I've got anything else to plug.
Okay, thanks. Last question. What was the best Scottish wrestling event that you participated in? Or something that we can look out, I don't know, on some on-demand platform, something that you suggest?
Well, there's a match on YouTube. I go to the WrestleZone a lot in the northeast of Scotland. They've got a match online which is Tyler Bate versus Damien, and it's probably one of the best matches I've ever seen. Personally, like sitting there and watching it, but that show itself overall was incredible because Damien came in as the bad guy. He was given this opportunity against Tyler Bate, and then he was part of this big faction called Sterling Oil. And over 18 months, this whole story was Damien was getting outcasted a little bit by this new golden boy, Sean Johnson, who was the champion. He was now the undisputed champion. And then on this night, Damien had this amazing match with Tyler Bate. There was no interference. It was just a straight up match. He lost. But at the end of the night, there was a big celebration for Sean Johnson. And it was like everyone had to say what they were thankful for Sean. And Damien just picked up the mic. He went something like, I've only got one thing to say. He dropped the mic and then kicked Sean in the face. Yeah. And the emotion, the rupture of emotion in the building was just incredible. So that whole story into that event, and then that catalyst into what came moving forward into Aberdeen Anarchy was just wonderful. So if anyone's going to check out a match that I'm going to recommend to you, it'll be Tyler Bate versus Damien from WrestleZone. It is on YouTube, so I would go check that out. But
Okay.
I've been very lucky to be part of many shows as a fan. I've only ever took part in maybe 2 shows as a general manager elect idiot that got booed relentlessly. Thankfully, the second time I meant to get booed. The first time I didn't, but the second time I meant to get booed. So that was really fun. But yeah, anyway, Tyler Bate versus Damien. That'll be my recommendation.
Definitely, I'm going to check this out. Well, thanks to Billy Strachan to be our guest here on the Last Minute Wrestling podcast.
Thank you for having me. It really, I'm quite enjoying these podcast things. So I'm gonna hopefully do more interviews. But thank you for letting me ramble for 20 minutes.
Don't worry, it was my pleasure, and we should do this sometime in the future. Okay.
Absolutely. I'm well up for it. Yeah.
Thanks, Billy. Bye.
Thank you.
And that one, guys, was our guest this time, Billy Strachan from Scottish Wrestling Network. If you want to keep yourself updated, remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. You can find us on Twitter at LMW Podcast. I have been your host from Italy, Frank Mandolini, and as always, guys, stay safe.